Did you know that St. Luke's University Health Network has been recognized by the U.S. government as the highest performing health system in the United States for quality? You heard right. St. Luke's #1 recognition affirms our status as the top leader among the most respected healthcare providers in the nation, including Houston Methodist and the Mayo Clinic. To state it simply, if you want to receive the best care when you go to a hospital, come to St. Luke's.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me, taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Meantime, also, Zoran Mamdani putting out the word today that, get this, he wants to spend another $1.2 billion in migrant funds. I thought we got past that, guys. I thought we got past the point where New York City was like being overrun by migrants and where they were costing billions upon billions of dollars. Well, welcome Zoran Mamdani. He plans on spending another $1.2 billion next year on migrants arriving to the Big Apple. This is according to his new proposal that he set forth. In other words, a combined price tag for the crisis just in New York City alone, over $10 billion over the last decade. That is a stunning, staggering amount. So I guess he didn't learn anything from the chaos that was caused during the issues with, Eric Adams. Remember the early part where they were everywhere and costing New York City an exorbitant amount and busting through the seams and all the migrant shelters and hotel rooms and food and everything else. And now he wants more. He's also saying, by the way, to fulfill his agenda, not just on that, but some other stuff, that he is threatening to raise property taxes if there's not going to be a wealth tax or a increase to corporate taxes. In other words, he says, I have no choice. Either way, you're going to get taxed. You're going to get socked. And I'm going to make sure that you essentially fund more illegal migrants in New York City. This guy really has his priorities out of whack. And it comes with a recent case. I brought up the fact that his health czar has a history of essentially being a part of a nonprofit that registered patients in mental hospitals to vote. You can't make it up. That they were actually going around, including inpatient clinic for people with psychiatric disorders. I'd say you got some issues if you're in an inpatient. That means you're there. You can't leave. You're inpatient and you're there for psychiatric disorders. And yet the Mamdani health czar, and I'm sure Mamdani thinks this is great, he thinks those people should essentially be voting. I would really love to have people with schizophrenia and other things voting. I mean, you can make the case that a lot of people who voted for Mamdani were crazy. So maybe it's fitting. But now the new case that everybody is talking about tied to Zoran Mamdani. Recently, this guy who was wielding a knife, and now prosecutors are having attempted murder charges against him, which I think is completely appropriate. The guy never should have been out. He was clearly having some sort of a schizophrenic breakdown. The family called authorities, and you clearly see in the body cam footage when law enforcement shows up at the house, the guy started lunging at them with an enormous knife. And then they have to open fire. They're trying to protect themselves. So you're dealing with all of these issues, right? So the guy was shot 4 times. He goes to the hospital. He's listed in stable yet critical condition, is alive. And then the DA there in Queens, where it took place, Queens, New York, charges the guy, the 22-year-old guy, looking at pursuing attempted murder charges against him. Clearly, if you see the guy lunging at you with this enormous knife, he's clearly trying to kill you, and he's clearly a major threat, not just to his family, but to himself and certainly to others and officers. And yet Zoran Mamdani, he puts out in a press statement and then follows up in a press release and press conference saying that this guy, because he has some troubles, we should be nice to him and get him help and make sure we get him back out on the streets. Listen to this. This is what he had to say about this guy, saying, take the handcuffs off him. Don't charge this nice, sweet, wonderful man who is lunging at law enforcement with an enormous knife.
The Queens District Attorney is expected to bring charges against Javed Chakrabarti later today. I'm just wondering if you talked to the Queen District Attorney about that, if you talked to the family. I'm curious what you would say about it.
So I think I caught the bulk of your question. I have not directly spoken with the district attorney. I will say, however, that no family should have to endure this kind of pain. What they need right now is care, dignity, and support. Javed should not be prosecuted by the Queens District Attorney. His handcuffs should be removed.
That is a disgraceful comment. I'm so worried about the family. What about the family of the law enforcement officers? What about the threat that this guy poses to every single family, including his own family? This is clearly a dangerous individual. If you're about to lunge at your family members and law enforcement with a massive knife, I think you need to be locked up for a long, long time. And yet he seems to have sympathy for this guy. In fact, he even visited the guy at the hospital. We haven't heard that he spent any time with the law enforcement guys because he doesn't seem to put that as a priority. His priority is visiting the guy who was about to kill them with a knife. So Melinda Katz, who is the DA there in Queens, she is seeking to pursue criminal charges against the guy, and I hope she throws the book at him. I feel sorry for this guy. He clearly needs help, but he clearly also needs to be behind bars so he's not a threat to other people. And yet Zohran Mamdani is putting this guy's needs and desires ahead of every single person in New York. Is there anybody who would like to live next door to somebody like this? I think the answer is no, no, and no. And here is Zohran Mamdani, by the way, back in 2021. Here he is talking about defunding the police and putting social workers. So I get this guy. Can you imagine you sent a social worker instead of police to this? I'd be praying for that social worker right now, I'm sure, in the hospital. But here is Zohran Mamdani back in 2021.
About defund the NYPD, the entirety of the push is defund the NYPD and refund all of these different social services and things that actually create safety.
Now changing his tune, claiming he doesn't want to defund the police.
I've been very clear about my view of public safety and the critical role that police have in creating that. The vision that we've put forward in this campaign, despite what others may say, is not to defund the police. It is, in fact, to allow those officers to respond to these serious crimes that many of them signed up to address.
So here he is. The one thing I will say about Zohran Mamdani, and there's not a lot of nice things I can say, but the one thing I will say is he said who he is and he's living up to it. During the campaign, a lot of people thought, oh, this is just too crazy. No, he's not going to do this. He's not going to do this. He's not going to want to raise taxes. He's not going to want to have those in psychiatric locations essentially vote. He's not going to be sympathizing with them over the NYPD. But sure enough, he's delivering.